Chapter 11 of Melanie Klein's book, Capitalism vs. the Climate, is called You and White Army. It particularly focuses on capitalism versus the climate in terms of the less resource-rich society, the indigenous people. For years, the indigenous people have been fighting for their rights to protect the land that they have lived on for their whole lives, and that both they and their ancestors have spent the entirety of their lives keeping in pristine condition for their families and for the generations to come. However, when it comes to money, multi-billion-dollar corporations fail to respect that. My book review that follows will be discussing the implications of such disrespect on indigenous people, which will be the summary of the argument made by Klein in the chapter. I will further present a critical evaluation of that argument and how this links in with the bigger questions about the media and global culture. Chapter 11 discusses a multitude of examples of court cases where the indigenous people have been disrespected and have had to fight for the rights of their own land. Major businesses and government corporations have been reaping economic benefits from their land without their consent, and in turn, as Arthur Manuel, who comes from a long line of respected indigenous leaders, explained, the indigenous people are in fact subsiding the wealth of these corporations with their impoverishment. It has constantly been a fight for indigenous people, and the battle proves to be ongoing as these people generally lack the monetary resources and social clout to enforce their rights. Indigenous people do not have many powerful forces supporting them and their rights, yet rather have many powerful forces standing in opposition of their rights. Ultimately, these people have the right to the conservation and protection of the environment and the productive capacity of their lands, territories, or resources, as stated in the United Nations Declarations on the Rights of Indigenous People. The Declaration further states that Indigenous people have the right to redress for the lands that have been confiscated, taken, used, or damaged without their free, prior, or informed consent. I will discuss one example to put the exploitations of the rights and land of Indigenous people in context. In January 2014, the Alaskan Native tribes joined forces with many green groups in order to press charges against Shell and their Arctic drilling adventures. This Arctic drilling had many negative implications for the Alaskan tribes, since for them, a healthy way of life is undeniably entwined with a healthy ocean. As explained in the lawsuit, these people have hunted and depended on the animals of the Chukchi Sea for thousands of years. This is their garden, their identity, their livelihood. Without it, they would not be who they are today. They therefore had every right to oppose against any activity that will endanger their way of life and the animals which their livelihood depends on. This case proved to be a victorious suit for the indigenous people of Alaska, as it came to be described as a massive blow to Shell's Arctic ambitions. However, what proves to be extremely worrisome is, as Klein comments, without indigenous people raising the human rights stake in this battle, it's a victory that may have never taken place. This is where the issue of globalization takes place. Firstly, in terms of financial factors, some of the wealthiest and most powerful sources on the planet are simply becoming more and more wealthy and powerful based on the impoverishment of others tens of thousands of kilometers away. It further becomes a cultural issue because it begins to question the issue of power linked with resources. These indigenous people may lack monetary resources or social clout, as aforementioned, and because of this, they lack power. Other corporations who hold great power because they are known globally and many stakeholders globally depend and invest in them are seen to have the power to exploit and take advantage of less powerful societies. Furthermore, with the discussion of globalization comes the issue of climate change. It has come to be realized that indigenous rights ought to be aggressively backed up, because they in fact represent the most powerful barriers protecting us from a future of climate chaos. Yes, perhaps the indigenous people will suffer the consequences of their land being destroyed more harshly and before the rest of the world. However, this exploitation of land ultimately affects the whole world. It is a global problem which is leading to the path of climate change. Why is it only when the people of the world realize that there may be implications for them personally that they decide it's time to take action?